So if you're a local brand, this may be time for you to invest in certain locally produced goods or partner local brands.
Join the movement. Change what you can with the MG ZS EV.
Archana and Alicia, it's a pleasure having you here. Both of you are doyens in your field, PR mavericks, one a little younger than the other, but one with more wisdom than the other. So let's just get right down to it. So the first question, Archana, is more to you. And by the way, congratulations on the Kaleido Awards, PR Agency of the Year 2020. Fantastic. What a way to start the year. It's just that there have been a lot of rigmaroles this year. How has the PR and marketing strategy evolved in this pandemic for you? And what are the new pillars of business that you've been focusing on, Archana? Any challenges in particular?
Sure. I mean, see, when we think about the PR and marketing strategies, it goes back to, where is the consumer? Because that's where all our strategies are driven out of what is it that the consumer wants. So let's reflect a little bit, if time permits, to sort of saying, okay, what are the socio-economic or the behavioral changes that are visible amongst consumers? Obviously, they are stumped as all of us are, right? In terms, they didn't expect that 7 months they're going to be in sort of isolation, nesting at home. So nesting at home or working from home or trying to sort of, entertain yourself at home, school from home, etc., have become trends. And hence that provides us, or all of us need to look at this, whether it's you're a luxury brand or whether we are consulting with them. We need to think about, okay, if they're going to be largely at home, how is it that we can actually build appeal for the particular brand or that we are representing while they're still sitting at home and they don't have an opportunity to engage? That's thrown up some challenges. The other thing has happened is there's been an acceleration in adoption of digital.
Right.
And that's not really just about news consumption. So we're reading Lux book on online only, but that's one thing. But it's actually gone into banking because more and more transactions are taking place, definitely. And people have certainly learned how to shop online. So that is something that all brands will have to come to terms with. If you don't have an account, you don't have an e-commerce enabled website, get there fast. That's another thing. I think there's been a heightened sort of environmental or sort of social consciousness that has sort of, so ethics is just as relevant as aesthetics today. So are you caring for the environment? Are you purpose driven? And that provides a lot of cues, because if customers are going to be looking at those aspects a lot more closely, they're all judging brands to say, okay, during the pandemic, what did you really contribute into? Did you really make an effort? Did you apportion resources to support a problem? Did you make ventilators? Did you provide masks? Brands are being judged at this moment. There's another element which is really looking at national pride that has emerged and be self-sufficient. Also, certain nations are being stigmatized. In that process, you find that, there is also a need to support your own industry, right, in these times, whether it's been the homegrown brands, etc. So there is. So if you're a local brand, this may be time for you to invest in certain locally produced goods or partner local brands. So those are kind of the emerging kind of needs in an environment where jobs have been lost. There's uncertainty about how long this is going to continue. Maybe salaries have been cut. So people have become more price sensitive, or what we term as the minus -1 living. So you
Right.
can afford, let's say, a BMW 7 Series, but you're not going to buy that. You're going to play safe and buy a 5.
Yeah.
Only because there is an uncertainty out there. So, I think that kind of gives another aspect for us to dwell upon as consultants and for brands to consider is how are they going to expand the need for inclusion.
Right.
So don't bank on your high value items. Try and, really set to, develop a sort of a well-priced and affordable line so that more and more people will be. So, a certain amount of price sensitivity has to come in. And obviously, as we consult, we need to be sensitive to that also, that all our customers are going to be having a fairly sort of stretched budgets at this point of time. So
Right.
we provide them better ways. Those are some hope tone for our discussion.
Absolutely, very well captured. In a nutshell, the entire temperament of the industry, the entire temperament of the consumer, and the absolutely hardcore vision, a detail, focus of not just the millennial, but the buyers poised to look at brands of their social relevance, of existential luxury, all of that beautifully captured, Archana. So my question is to you, Alicia, now. What are the impacts from a consumer-driven perspective? We are, I think, a part of marketing brands. So how has communication, how's the adoption, how's the adaptation, how's the agility, how's our response as brand marketers, as brand communicators evolved in this entire pandemic era? What have been the key challenges as for you?
So I'll first address the first question. What has been really good is that people have started considering public relations as public relations and not PR, which is getting 4 articles out and your job is done. We've seen, and we've done this for a lot of our brands, where we've kind of helped them restructure their offerings as a business. Mm-hmm. We've changed their narrative and messaging to be more empathetic. The price points have to be adapted to. In fact, one of the first things that we did was sat down with all our clients and understood their supply chains. And we knew that this is going to go on for 6 months because reports were coming in that, the first virus was, it was detected end October, early November. And by the time we got it in India, it was already 6 months. So I think the first thing we did was we sat down with all of them and we broke down the supply chain to figure out how we can change and what needs to be adapted to. And also on the basis of the final product offering, how many of them were digitally savvy and how many needed to make that digital leap. So we sat down, we worked on all those aspects, and which is why I say that finally they started realizing that PR is not press relations, it's actually public relations. And over the last 6 months, the boundaries have completely blurred between what a communications officer is expected to do and what a marketing person does. It's pretty much now become a consolidated role for the industry. And of course, over a period of time, you're going to see the lines blurring even further. And while we were working on these narratives, and I think the industry's also following suit, you change the messaging around, you change the partnerships, you change the price offering in certain cases. So yeah, I mean, it's been actually quite enriching, molding and repurposing brand offerings. And you mentioned the second thing about challenges. Of course, one of the biggest challenges is reskilling your teams, because of course they've been very conditioned to work with a certain set of ideas, but now things are going to be different. Even something like operating remotely. In fact, we've given up our offices across the country in all 3 cities, and we're just going to be doing a work from home. So one was that aspect, and one is, of course, the reskilling to make them digitally ready. So we spent a lot of time working on that aspect, and I think that's what got translated for our clients as well going forward. Yeah.
I love the fact that you spoke about, digital experiences, unlearning to relearn, or sometimes to relearn to adjust to the new normal. One thing that interests me is how has this pandemic, you spoke about e-commerce, agility, versatility of your brands, whether they had it to kind of reset and re-strategize and move to get in for the new normal. What have you done in terms of technology interventions, in terms of digitization to up the ante, not just for your clients, but for your teams, for yourself internally? Are there certain mechanisms or gear shifts that
we've moved to SaaS platforms for better coordination internally because it's all remote. We've got a lot of data-driven tools that we're using to generate insights. The tools generate data, the insights eventually come from us.
From us, yes.
So we started looking at that because now going forward, it's going to be more result-oriented. Whatever you do has to solve a solution and a problem, and it has to be result-oriented. And in order to do that, it's important to have data as part of your strategy. Of course, for younger homegrown brands, it's not easy because the tools come at a cost.
Correct.
But as far as possible, we're trying to adopt technology to structure our strategies better.
Data analytics was something which was already a part of your offering, Alisha. Isn't that true? So nowadays, it's something you're kind of moving to the version 2.0 of it.
That's right, actually. Yeah.
So what are you doing in the version 2.0?
It's too soon to say.
Okay.
We're working on a tool. We'll keep you
Okay.
posted. Yeah.
Lovely. Archana, the same question to you. Digitization, technology has made a lot of lives easier, especially in times where people are being given the pink slips. Restaurants are wrapping up operations. Retailers are facing the numbness of consumers not coming in. Aviation sector kind of, dealing with the role of consumers not traveling. What is it that you, as a PR agency, as a leading PR agency, have adopted in terms of digital tools or technological interventions?
See, a lot of those tools were honestly already in place.
Yeah.
I can't say that we've done anything really specific during this period, with the exception of, making video calls almost integrated into every conversation that we do. If it's on 2 members that want to have a conversation regarding a particular problem or a strategy, it's just we encourage conversations on video so that we get FaceTime with each other, which is otherwise in. But otherwise, we're looking at all the other tools were in place already, whether it's data was already being gathered via third-party tools that was already in place. The collaboration tools were already in place. If we were looking at how is it that we manage our databases, which are very, they're constantly evolving. There are third-party, again, subscription tools. We were already doing that. If it was measurement of what our programs and were yielding those of share of voices, everything was already outsourced.
Right.
So we have, over time, what we've done, we don't do something as simple as tracking in-house. We just outsource it because talent has to be involved in doing more relevant stuff to that. They certainly read the sort of the media to understand opportunities, but they don't necessarily track, because that's first thing in the morning, those reports are already into the client. So I think technology really shift around that, and which I think should be a lasting and a great asset for us to sort of milk is the fact is we're not going to be getting onto a flight for a long time to come to go and see a client sitting in Bombay or Bangalore while I'm based in Delhi. In the old days, they would pick up the phone and say, well, can you come in next week or maybe this week and, come and see it for a meeting. And now they're so happy, let's just set up a Zoom call. So what that does is we are able to engage with our clients more frequently at faster periods. And I think that's become a very, very healthy proposition.
Correct.
And I think that saves time, but more importantly for the environment, it's, so why are we, carbon credits to our favor to the world. And so that's kind of thing. If I look at the challenges really for the businesses, what happened with the pandemic was really, I look at it three ways, right? We've been through something called survive.
Right.
So that was first the challenge, that quickly, how is it that you can cost control and how is it that you could? Because, every other day a client would call to say, hey, listen, survival's a bit of a challenge for us. Can you help us in sort of reducing cost of your services? So we went through that survival sort of phase. We're I think, at the revival stage at this point.
Correct.
Because we've managed to recalibrate what needs to be done. So building in really an entrepreneurial drive amongst each and every talent was the most important thing for us. So they had to work independently, but take full onus. Of what was being done and run with that. So, and yet be mindful of the cost of the service that we were providing to the client. So I think mentally we worked with the team and said, okay, listen, let's turn entrepreneurial. These are tough times. It's going to mean a reset. Doesn't mean that, okay, tomorrow we have a vaccination and everybody's going to go back to paying you top dollars. It's not going to happen. This reset will take a good 3 years to sort of reach pre-COVID levels. And that's really based on our historical experience of previous downturns. So, getting teams aligned to that was something that there was a lot of internal conversations that to happen. And I think every organization has done it. Then being creative, but within a very, very, tighter sort of spend. Don't suggest outrageous ideas. We are not going to be doing a catwalk on the Great Wall of China, right? We are going to have to do a catwalk within the means that, so, whether it's fostering collaborations and extending it to, other areas that we've never experimented before. So those, I think, are just being agile, being creative has been the most important sort of aspect of overcoming this pandemic or overcoming it. But, in a way, a crisis always brings out the best in you, right?
Correct.
You're not creativity, let's say, is it's necessity is the mother of invention. So innovation in the defining world and the pandemic has really forced us to think, how is it that we can innovate? And I think there have been great examples that the industry has pulled out when not, work at home, said, okay, listen, as a dermat, nobody's going to come to you. How can you certainly, springboard to say, can we do some virtual consults? Right. That had to happen. Okay, if you don't have a product and you're not doing anything for the thing, just provide them a nice, cool playlist that they could enjoy. So remain connected. But let's imagine you're a beauty product, and in the old days, what would you do? You take a lipstick and you put it on your sort of wrist, look at the color, and say, "Are you going to do that today?" No, you're not going to do it. So there have to be augmented reality tools that are going to be employed.
Right.
So whether it's for a watch, that how does it look on your wrist while you're doing a Zoom call, showcasing the best of new novelties that have come out at Watches and Wonders, or for consumers sitting at home who want to buy, you will have to bring in those sort of technologies. I think tech will come in there. Tech will come in
Right.
the way we design our virtual rooms. So there's going to be a lot of virtual stuff that will happen.
I agree.
I'm going to showcase a new collection. I'm not going to have the sort of luxury of inviting media, influencers, all of them into a particular store or a particular space. However socially distant I may plan it, they prefer it online. So do we have partners that can help us do this? And that's really where we've been concentrating all our energies and figuring out innovative solutions that we can offer our clients.
Superb. So the capturing of in every adversity, there's not only an opportunity, but a heightened leveling up of learning. And the second thing that you said so beautifully was disruption. So every time you innovate, you create, you recreate, it is all about disrupting the space and doing it like you last put it, with technology. Maybe in a narrative play has technology in it. And that's where the digitization lies. And, you spoke about the experience, the virtual experiences. I think a week back, I was listening to Mr. Darshan Mehta talk the same language, is that, the narratives have shifted. So when there used to be people walking into the store, the same experience now, the white glove experience, is what we try to give people virtually with the same store person, taking them through the same rigmarole or the same kind of a white glove or a golden glove experience that we used to in store. So I'm absolutely certain that the digitization, the disruption, the innovation is in this narrative. Now, I just want to understand from you how this is a recast narrative. Our narratives have changed. Our deployment platforms have changed. We become more ingenious in packaging it. We become more innovative in content. Now, when it comes to media, clients, customers, how is it that we've kind of evolved with this entire 6 months of play? What is it that we've kind of re-advised them on with the agility to kind of deliver on the brand perspectives that have now shifted very divergently in the current environment and scenario? So how is it that the narrative, packaging, play, strategic inputs to clients, media houses, and to brands, what is the change?
Do you want to take it, Alisha, or should I go?
So while talking about digitization, of course, one is that your press conferences have gone digital. In fact, we did our first one in May with Ajinkya Rane. And also, there are a lot of companies that are providing digital avatars for fashion shows. So they're literally recreating the entire experience through digital avatars, and you can look and feel the clothes pretty much like it is. So of course, it's a very costly tool at this point. So I know that it's not the right time to recommend, but of course, over a period of time, people are going to start adopting to it. Now to answer your question on what have we been recommending to clients, of course, it's not a hard sell. It's more empathy-led to understand what the consumer really wants. So, in fact, for a brand as early as May, they had launched an Evil Eye collection. And it was all about protection of mother, protecting your relationships, protecting, whatever is sacred to you. And just when they were about to launch it, the lockdown struck, right? So instead of making it a more glitzy and glamour affair, we actually constructed a month-long activation through their social media platforms to create mindful living. So whether it was tying up with a reputed spa to actually talk about meditation. There was something else talking about mindful eating. So we
Right.
spent the entire month curating some very interesting experiences. We had somebody in the sustainable sector talk about sustainability, so that the protection of earth. So it's more about storytelling now, and then of course you find different mediums to communicate that story, whether it's through the IGTV handles. In some cases, brands are looking to explore a lot of digital content. So especially in the kids sector, audio has seen 155% increase for the kids, for kids brands.
Right.
In fact, because parents don't want screen time, right? Because they're now studying on screen, their activities are on screen, their birthday parties are virtually done. So a lot of parents are encouraging reading and audio. So again, books, we've got a couple of clients who are in like authored books and activity workbooks. They're doing extremely well. We've kind of created an interesting narrative for them. We're pushing some of our other brands to look at audio-led partnerships. So it's just the way it's being packaged, which is why I said earlier on that finally people are starting to realize that PR is not press relations. It is public relations, because you're kind of modifying your brand, your offering to be available to your audience through different platforms.
Right. Very nicely put. Yes, I do agree. And I think it takes us back to the point that Archana had mentioned right in the beginning. It is the analysis of where's your customer.
Correct.
So, Archana, the same question back to you, but with a little more of an influx, is that, you're also walking today the thin line between marketers and communicators. For marketers, what's absolutely priority and relevant or most important is the revenue. For us, it's the relevance of the brand in today's scenario. So how do you walk that plank?
I think the world has turned integrated, right? And Alisha will also agree on that. I think we all work with the marketing teams today and may the best idea win, So we are around a table and there's a digital agency, there's the PR agency, there is, somebody doing direct marketing, somebody doing sort of media planning. And all of us have a shot at providing that idea or that campaign that will connect with the customer. Thereafter, yes, specialists go build the piece together, but everybody has. So integrations really come of age. What has happened in this pandemic is, yes, the value for digital has been recognized. And that's been a fabulous thing for all of us in the industry practitioners, because we would struggle to sort of get clients to value digital quite the same. Can we just make sure that the Economic Times as a print article was a constant ask? And today they are quite very, very content with the fact that there was there was an online piece in the Economic Times. Now the 80-20 ratio between digital and print is there, because also you've had shrinking newsrooms and number of titles, etc., have come down in a way. New opportunities in terms of podcasts have arrived. So that's something that we are seeing a lot more offtake. Clients make time to do those. Clients are very happy. You saw the whole, entire sort of how swamped we were with IG Lives. That kind of thing was suddenly very meaningful to, clients that weren't even very conversant with, let's say, video conversations, learned to sort of adapt to this new normal for them. And that's certainly now going to be the way forward. So we are finding that digital storytelling and video storytelling, etc., has really sort of going to get stronger. There's another aspect where a lot of people were talking about, was saying, well, our influencers really going to be around for a long time. But I think influencers, at least the credible ones, have actually, because the way they've been with how agile they've been with adapting the storytelling to suit the occasion, suit the environment, the constraints within which they've had to sort of work new content, those guys are certainly sure winners in this whole thing. So they're definitely going to be of value to brands, and brands have recognized that sort of element. Yeah, I guess, digital, if there was one thing I would say that, during COVID-19 that has emerged, it's the digitization that has emerged as the ultimate disruptor. People, even Instagram has grown, I think, by about 14% during the quarter of April, May, June. That's the kind of increase. LinkedIn has grown substantially. They are talking about a reach now of about 68 million in India. You're getting even Facebook, despite it's being such a stagnant medium, has grown during this period. So obviously there's valuable content that people, but parallelly, because of the fake news that went around on those WhatsApp forwards,
correct,
the credible titles, or let's say media has got an elevated position. So people trust media houses a lot more today. And they value the fact that the source of this information is coming from Hindustan Times, Times of India, Economic Times, Vogue.in, L.in, a lot more. And that is something that is, hopefully going to be remain.
Super.
Experts are another thing which are very valued, right? What happened during it? Everybody wanted to turn to WHO to hear what is their prognosis on this particular. So there was everybody was turning to an expert to try and find a solution. So opportunities for us in our industries is saying, okay, let's become category experts and try and share that knowledge with the universe. That opens up a new door for us. Those are the kind of trends that we have observed and, milked during this period.
Super. So it's basically the adoption of the new, but also the leverage of the old and the legacy of the old that we've gone back to in terms of traditional experts, traditional media agencies, and all of that. That's a phenomenal transition. It's a beautiful transition, actually. So I think
I think they were losing trust, right?
Yes,
we lost trust in media, and we weren't sure whether where was it. It was getting more marketing oriented. That sort of field has kind of, at least the trust of the consumers, bounced back.
So yeah, we are re-looking at legacy creators at our stalwarts. That's a very fresh perspective. And now I just want to ask one penultimate question, after which I will kind of move forward to the last one because of the paucity of time. What in terms of the criticals, in terms of cost adaptiveness, in terms of the tricks of the trade that we as whole, I know Alicia spoke very briefly about moving from the physical space, letting go of 3 offices and looking at a work from home kind of this thing. It's a very, very beautiful element of bringing your operational costs down. Asha, according to you, what are the cost implications that this pandemic has come with? Are there any tricks in the trades? Are there any things that you've adopted to kind of reanalyze cost and reassess cost and bring those down and maybe kind of boost it up a little bit?
See, in the early days, what was immediately was to sort of say, yes, a lot of PR firms in the country, Alicia, we are part of the industry association called PRCAI, Public Relations Consultants Association. A lot of firms there have actually given up offices. But a lot of us are also in lock-in periods with where we have taken up spaces, so that wasn't something that we were able to do. But in the future, what we'll see is that we will all be reducing our workplaces. The size will be reduced, because in the long term, hot desking will really remain with us. So we will come together, but we don't necessarily come together 5 days a week, and we won't have a permanent desk for sure. But otherwise, cost cutting was done by relooking at what is it that, maybe, yes, voluntarily, we at our firm, at least, a lot of us took pay cuts immediately.
Right.
Because our revenues had shrunk.
Yeah.
So it was we had to recalibrate that. A lot of young startups that were clients came to us and said, hey, listen, we are getting no revenue. How are we going to, work with you all? So we gave them a basic service at a basic price. We said, don't run away.
Never.
Keep the momentum, but we'll only give you, this set deliverable, but it'll be at this benchmark. So it was a low burn model for them.
Right.
We started sort of saying, okay, this particular talent has lost a few clients. This one needs to, reallocate resources. And we spoke earlier about the entrepreneurial bent of mind. How is it that we could sort of use the time also to reskill, hone their skills during this period of time when there was maybe a paucity of work.
Right.
So all that kind of thing, definitely, I don't know whether there were, the skills that we helped sort of talent to sort of get up to was really around understanding what sort of analytical tools that are available, what they could possibly bank on, point their clients in the direction of, if, these are cost-effective measures that they can possibly adopt. The kind of things that we ended up doing during this period.
Yeah. So what I hear is you've basically use this pandemic to strengthen your relationships with the clients and support them better. Yeah, so that's what I'm hearing. So that's brilliant. And Alicia, the same question back to you. Tricks of the trade, any new learnings from the pandemic or any cost-cutting measures that you would want to put out there for the newbies, for the younger entrepreneurs, for people who are in the PR space? Any new words of wisdom?
Sure. In fact, I would, I've been calling COVID the new CFO, to be honest. It's really gotten you to rethink so many of your plans.
Yeah.
Of course, when the lockdown hit, a lot of our clients wanted to stop work. And that's, like Arsha mentioned, revenues had completely shrunk. So, of course, salaries were taken a hit by everybody in the organization. We didn't let go of anyone in spite of that. And for us, the reason for actually giving up our offices was more to upskill digitally, because there are just so many interesting tools that can enable you to work and perform better.
Right.
And get result-oriented press and digital and influencer and PR, like basically every aspect of your strategy, right? So we wanted to channelize that aspect on upskilling through digital. But if there is a young entrepreneur who's trying to cost cut, I think the first thing I would tell them is to reassess their business and see whether it's going to be relevant 6 months from now, anticipate the changes. If half their product offerings are not going to be relevant 6 months from now, tell them to stop manufacturing those immediately or changing those skills immediately, and start putting monies on something that they potentially see will scale up and that they have some sort of expertise to kind of pivot and move in that direction. I think that's the first thing I'd tell them to do, because once you've done your projections and you've figured out what your strengths are, what your capabilities are, just keep the strengths, see if those strengths are relevant post-COVID era or 6 months from now, because life is changing so dynamically, and then kind of work on a roadmap from there. And if that means
Lovely.
giving up your offices, giving up 10 warehouses, trying to contract manufacture your production, you work out of like Coorg and not in Bombay. I mean, whatever it takes. But first, kind of get your vision set, and once the vision is set, then you find your way back.
Brilliantly put.
Nikki, if I can just add to that, I think another area that I've been asking young startups to really concentrate on is on owned media. I said, never been more important time than owned media. Build that up to an level that you can do the storytelling on that. Because when you're going to go into digital marketing, that's going to be the point of reference. So if you don't have enough storytelling happening on your own platforms, then there's third parties are not going to be using all of that. Build
Absolutely.
that, try and reach out to your target customer through lovely videos, through collaborations, with third party platforms, with influence, and get the word out there. That is the most effective form of PR today that is available to most brands. Because, if I look at it, big titles don't want to write about something which is young and small, not necessarily.
Right.
They don't have scale. I mean, if you go to Economic Times and saying, my business is under a 5 crore business, they're not going to necessarily want to write about it. Right? You've got to be real to that situation. So how is it that those brands can go? Is there great tools available? If you can just get your Instagram, your website, your LinkedIn platforms all in place. That's the best investment that they would ever do.
Super. That's so on point. Yeah. Own your own skill sets. Sorry, Alisha, you wanted to say something?
Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to add to what Archana was saying. It's absolutely necessary to build your own platforms. In fact, that's why for us, for the last year and a half, we've been consulting a lot of brands on their social media and creating their own digital assets.
Right.
In fact, for a decor brand, we've created a platform with our digital marketing division, where you have carpenters and other fabricators that are actually required to eventually sell the product all on a singular digital platform. So I mean, there's a lot of interesting and innovative ways to do the storytelling. But then again, a lot of consumers, if you push your brand too much on your own handles, for a consumer, they know that it's the company talking. So it has to be like the right blend of what you're pushing out, what digital assets you're creating. Is it solving a problem? And you should and the media should honestly be the ones talking about your brand, because see, at the end of the day today, even Wikipedia needs important publications to write or verify your page on Wikipedia.
Correct.
Look on Twitter or Instagram, you still need those right press articles about you. So yeah, I mean, the core PR, the press part of it is always going to be alive. It's just the mediums are going to be mixed up. When I say mixed up, I mean they'll be more multidisciplinary. But yeah, it's totally on point.
So relatability. If the customer can relate to it on your own medium, that's the way to do it. Let them kind of speak your language. Lovely. One last question. I know that it's a long day. It's been a long day, but one last question is: what is the future for PR and marketing according to you, Alisha? And I'll pose the same question to you, Archana. So, Alisha, we'll start with you first.
Well, I've already said it's more brand planning. It's moving to that finally. In fact, when I started out in 2007, we were doing marketing back then for brands, because I never thought that PR was just those 4 press articles. I mean, it's taken almost a decade for everyone else to start realizing that. But it's definitely going to be a mix of digital and traditional tools. And it's not going anywhere, because now more than ever you need reputation management, you need storytelling, you need to regain trust, because a lot of companies have had some negative word of mouth or press going for them. So yeah, and most importantly, there have been over 17 to 18,000 new businesses that were registered up till June or July this year.
Wow.
So each and every one of them is going to need a publicist now, 6 months from now, 1 year from now, you know. So yeah, I think the future is pretty bright.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Archana, over to you.
No, absolutely. It's an optimistic future, but really 3 or 4 points that we need to be mindful of is it's time to capitalize on digital migration. One has been, you see a lot of questions being raised on capitalism. Even the Pope questioned it today.
Yes.
It's really capitalism. So it's time to make capitalism better. Which is by demonstrating maybe true purpose, right? So the purpose-driven customer playbook has to really be adopted. One needs to be a little bit human, right? So the human face, and one has seen that with brands like Sonu Sood becoming the face of campaigns is really is really about that, right? So
Right.
It's not about just being a commercially relevant person. There are a number of issues that you could adopt. You could rise to the occasion. So if you're let's say a gym, then switching to home workout sort of thing could be your way of rising to the moment, or it could be in the form of really taking up a case for domestic violence at home, etc. Those are issues that will definitely reigniting creativity. Because you can walk in there with, post-pandemic during this period with our dead ideas, or say, okay, how are we going to make own creative thinking, make it more flexible, infuse a little bit more human understanding into it. And this can be done through really expanding a lot of collaborations to make sure we let in people, create new market spaces for our brand, for audiences with technologies, etc. Really, that's really, I would think, is the 3 main takeaways. So you need to capitalize on, and third, really look at how is it that you reignite creativity even in the same old.
Super. Well put in a nutshell, very well captured. So I'm going to take a reading out of the honeybee collage that you have.
Okay.
They say that if the honeybees were to perish, the world will survive only for 4 more years. We are honeybees of the entire corporate world. So I think the future is as bright as Archana's background, and we are here to not just kind of propel it to better avenues, but I think make the brands excel at what they do with early adaptations, with a social influx into their thinking, and always disrupting with creative innovation, digital interventions at all. Over to you, Riddhi. And before I leave, I want to wish both of you, Alicia and Archana, all the very best. We are in it together, and I know that we are going to flourish.
Well, thank you,
Nikki, for this absolutely wonderful conversation. Pleasure. You're a great listener too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Archana. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Nikki. It was one passion-driven discussion, and I have learned so much. So thanks to all of y'all, and Alicia and Archana, congratulations. And thank you for participating in Luxbook Top 50 celebrations. It really, really means a lot to us. And Nikki, thank you so much for doing this for us. Thank you, ladies.